So, like many of you, I myself have found myself in a place where I just watch TikTok the whole day. And this is my face. It's a face of just utter despair after watching TikTok and wasting all of my time. So, I hope that that is not how we want to spend our time. We actually want to spend our time doing things that are important to us, and we want to spend our time doing things that have novelty, that have absorption, and that are spiritual in nature. So we have about 3,000 3-second moments within the day, and I know for sure I don't want to spend my time in despair just scrolling through TikTok, completely unengaged with what I'm doing, sort of living this life over here where I'm not doing anything meaningful with my time. So how can we fix that? Instead of scrolling through TikTok or looking at all these YouTube shorts, how can we actually do something that's meaningful and positive for our life? So I'd like to start off with talking about three separate techniques and concepts that we can use to make our life more meaningful and more positive. So the first one is going to involve bringing novelty into our life. And this is going to be through meditation or mindfulness, sorry. Mindfulness. And so, what is being mindful? Being mindful is just bringing yourself into the present moment and focusing your attention on what's going on directly around you and not sort of being caught up in your mind. And so, a great example of the difference between mindfulness and mindlessness is when you're driving a car. So, sometimes when you're driving a car, you'll just drive your car and you'll just end up at the destination and you don't even know how you ended up there. That's a perfect example of when you're acting in a mindless way. You're just going through the actions, you're just performing your habits. So, what actually happens if we are mindful and we bring ourselves into the present moment? So, for one, we're going to have a lot more ability to think about what we're doing and to do things that were actually engaging to us and things that were previously not as engaging, say driving a car. If you bring your mind to the present, your mind's going to figure out some way to make it engaging. It might not be engaging as first, but if you continue to practice mindfulness, things will start to become a lot more engaging and novel to you. So if we are mindful, we get into the state, we sort of lose our sense, we sort of become a non-striving, meaning we don't really have any goals, we're just sort of living in the moment. We also, if we're mindful, we also have a more openness, we're more open to new opportunities. And so there's lots of benefits that come through mindfulness, just to name a few. And so what they've actually realized through this mindfulness is that mindfulness is correlated with so many positive things that includes lots of health benefits. And so they came up with this system, this intervention for people who have health concerns, who are going through cardiovascular disease or cancer, and it's called MBSR, which is mindfulness based stress reduction. And so, if we actually utilize mindfulness, we'll realize that these people who learn MBSR have better health outcomes from certain chronic diseases. And so, this can be used to treat a lot of things, but it can really be used to help psychosomatic issues. So things that involve your your physical body and your mental health kind of coming together to form these sort of abstract and weird symptoms that people have. And so that's one application of mindfulness is just through MBSR, and we know that you're going to be in a less striving area, you're going to be more open, you're going to have this thing called loving kindness. And so being mindful really just puts yourself in a more optimum state. And so over here on the mindless side, they've actually realized when doing a study that people who are in this mindless state, they have lower levels of happiness than people who are in a mindful state. So we want to sort of break the cycle of this mindless state, and we want to bring ourselves into the present moment and really experience what life has to offer. And when you're mindless, you also just go into your routine. So if your routine is something that's not very productive, like watching TikTok, if you're mindful in the moment, you're going to be able to short circuit that pathway and sort of do something that's more productive and meaningful to you. So now we sort of talked about how you can bring novelty to your life. How can you become fully absorbed in your life? And so this is something called flow. And so what really is flow? Well, flow is when you have a certain level of skill and you have a certain level of challenge. And flow is right in the middle where your skills meet your challenge, and this amazing thing happens where you just become fully absorbed in the task. Now, if the challenge is too small and you have a lot of skill, you'll just be bored. Bored. Whereas if the challenge is too high and you don't have enough skill, you're just going to become anxious and it's going to be too stressful for you. So, now let's talk a little bit about, okay, what is this flow state? So this is a state where you completely lose your sense of self. Your attention and your actions sort of become merged, so there's no real thinking or planning. You sort of just take in stimuli and do stuff. So attention and action are merged. There's a loss of time. Time seems to fly by. There's a change in the perception of time, so that time just flies by. Like I said, the task is very rewarding to you when you get into this state. It's very rewarding, and you feel like you're in control of the task. And so these are some of the benefits of being in the flow state. And so if you're in the flow state, you're better able to do well on your tasks and you're more absorbed in it. And this is definitely a better outcome than just doing something mindlessly, something you're not engaged with. And now here, if we look here, here's a better diagram of all the different ways that our skill level and challenge coexist. So you can see here, especially with a high level of skill and a high level of challenge, you're going to be in the flow state where you're really, really engaged in whatever practice you're doing. And then as your skill gets lower, you'll go into a control, relaxation, boredom, or apathy. You just don't even care if the challenge is so low and your skill is so low. And here you can see you become to get worried, you become to get anxious, and then you can find arousal up here. But really, we want to be focusing on the flow state. And so, okay, so these are some of the components of flow, but what actually happens when you enter flow? So, for one, you need to have a high level of attention and concentration on a task. And then your actions and awareness is gonna merge. And this is when you start to lose yourself. And so what's really interesting is if you know Michelangelo, he was that guy, painting. Well, what he would do is that he got so absorbed in his task that he would completely forget about needing to eat, to sleep, to drink. He would just paint all day long. And so this is kind of the place we want to get to, where we're so engaged in a task and that task just becomes so much more fun and we're so much more absorbed in it. The flow state is definitely a place where we should be trying to go, instead of just wallowing in despair, doing nothing meaningful with our lives. And so last, I want to talk about spirituality, which is just connecting with the sacred. And so as we connect with the sacred, this can increase our sense of meaning in our lives, which is correlated with the whole slew of benefits. So I think these three ways we can spend our time, with mindfulness, being in the flow state, or with spiritual experiences, is what we should be aiming for, so that we can find a novelty in everyday life, so we can be absorbed in what we're doing, and so that we can have some sort of meaning or spirituality to what we're doing. And so our life doesn't feel meaningless. So, through these actions and through some of these steps of focusing on the future, doing things to increase the activities that could bring you into the flow state, so trying to find states or activities that are going to bring about this challenge and skill. And then by trying to connect with the sacred, I hope that we are able to have more fulfilling lives together. And so, thank you for watching.